I'm like, did you shrink? Okay, go down.
Hello, my name is Laurel Rutledge. I am the CEO of LaurelRutledge.com, the creator of the Rutledge Perspective podcast, and now I am the host of the Rutledge Perspective on KCOH TV, The Boost, and I am so excited. My background in human resources and also in business and consulting has given me the opportunity to share information with all of you, and what we're going to do is talk about the foundational pieces, whether or not you're building a business or you're building a career. It all comes down to strategy and people. If you don't know where you're going, how do you know who needs to be on your team? So please join me, join in the conversation, catch the show both on the radio, on the app, and also on Facebook. And I will be on Tuesdays from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Thank you so much for listening. I look forward to seeing you there. Good morning. Good morning. It is Tuesday. Talk It Out Tuesday on KCOH Radio TV, The Boost, in historic 3rd Ward, not the Museum District. Good morning, West Texas, Odessa, Austin. So glad to see you. I'm happy to be here. I love Tuesdays. Even when my attitude's kind of off, I love Tuesdays. And it's going to be a good day. I had to listen to my little Kirk Franklin, My Smile this morning. You know, there's just something about music, Jerry, you know, and finding the thing that gets your soul singing, that gets your spirit moving, whatever that is. For me, that's music. So no matter where I am or what I'm doing, if I'm feeling some type of way, if I can turn on some music, whatever that kind of music is, there's a way that it just moves, which is just amazing. So, all right, so let's start with the PSAs today. First of all, Texas. Hopefully, everybody got registered yesterday, because yesterday was the deadline to be registered for you to be able to vote in our runoff. We have some primary runoffs that happen on July 14th. So hopefully everybody got registered, and early voting starts on the 29th of this month, and it lasts through July 10th. And then the primary itself is on July 14th. And I'm just going to have to decide what I want to do, because I love voting day. I like going on the day to vote, but I'm believing that the lines are going to be like they were in Atlanta and in Georgia. So we might need to just get out and vote early. So again, hopefully you got registered. Make sure you go see what is on the ballot, who's in your primaries. Re-educate yourself, because if it's a primary runoff, the person that you originally wanted may not be in that last runoff. So make sure you get educated on the issues and on the people so you can make an educated vote. PPP. So for those of you with small businesses, good morning, California. For those of you in small businesses, the PPP, or that loan program where you could go get a loan to help continue to cover your payroll during COVID. Remember, the first bout of money went away really quickly, and then they opened it back up again. And so they opened it back up on April 27th. But the deadline for applying, good morning, Cincinnati, Ohio. The deadline for applying for one of those loans is the end of the month, 6:30. So if you still need one, good morning, Dallas. If you still need one and you have not applied, please know that the deadline, you have to have your application in by the end of the month. And they have made some changes to the CARE Act. They went and cleaned it up. So make sure you're talking to somebody. Make sure you're following the DOL.gov, departmentoflabor.gov, to find out what's going on. But they have made some changes in how much you need to use. It was a 75-25, like you had to use 75% of the money for payroll, and you could use 25% of the money for like non-payroll type of expenses you needed to cover. They changed that in some of the new regulations around it to be a 60-40, so 60% for payroll and 40% could cover other expenses. So you just need to make sure you're paying attention to how you have to use your money. There's also some differences in how long you get to pay the loan back and all of those kind of things. So they did make some changes. They did open it back up on April 27th. You do have until the end of the month to apply. So if you have not, make sure you get with the Small Business Administration or whatever advisor that you have to see how you can get a loan if you need one, because there still is money out there. Also, the Families First Act which expands the family medical leave. So it covers things like if you have to be quarantined, if you're taking care of someone who has to be quarantined, if you have to stay home because your kids' schools are closed. That temporary expansion of the Family Medical Leave Act, called the Families First Corona Response Act, FFCRA, that lasts, the date right now is the end of the year, 12/31/2020. So if we end up having another lockdown, which it looks like we might in Houston, or maybe some other places in Texas, I don't know. But if you are looking at potentially having to, again, lock down your business or change the way you're doing business or something like that, or schools don't open for some reason, or schools are delayed in opening, or they're doing some online and some, in person, or however that's happening, understand that you need to make sure you pay attention to the Families First Act, because there are some requirements in there around paying for leave for parents who have to take care of kids whose schools are closed still. So that stuff hasn't gone away. We haven't been talking about it a lot because clearly there's been other stuff happening lately. But that stuff is still out there. The Families First Act is still out there. The payroll plan is still out there. The PPP is still out there. So make sure you're paying attention to that. Okay. There will be a webinar. I'm doing another webinar this week on Thursday. It will be at noon Pacific, 2 p.m. Central. And we're going to be talking about employee relations and some things to do. Adrian is going to be back in on the webinar. Our resident attorney is going to be on there, along with an executive search person. And we're going to be talking about some things to think about in employee relations. And the reason I did this is because the show last week, we got started talking about leadership, and we're going to talk about curiosity and leadership today. But we got started talking about leadership and the things that leaders are now having to deal with, because not only are you still managing employees that are trying to decide what to do about coronavirus, you bringing them back to work, are you not bringing them back to work, who can come back to work, people that don't want to come back to work, all of that stuff that you're having to deal with. Now, additionally, with challenges and the increase in visibility, understanding, challenges around inclusion and diversity, and the making sure employees feel safe beyond coronavirus, but safe simply because of who they are and how they were born. That's a lot for leaders to deal with, especially if some of those leaders don't deal with it well anyway under normal circumstances. So we're going to talk a little bit about curiosity today, but I wanted to do a webinar about that to really start digging into some of the more practical issues around performance management, how you're talking to people, and communication, and all those kind of things in these times that are a little tough. So that's going to happen on Thursday. I did post about that on my business page. I don't know if they've updated my landing page yet. Hopefully they will. If you can't register yet, check back this afternoon. don'tpanic.laurelrutledge.com is where you register. So I know they're supposed to be updating that this morning, but it'll be on Thursday. I think that's it for the public service announcements this morning. I'm sure something else will come up, but that's what we're going to do right now. All right.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
You started off with saying, and you said it emphatically.
Yes.
We're in the 3rd Ward.
Yes.
Community. Why did you say that like that? Not the museum district.
So, for those of you who are not in Houston, and I don't know if it made national news or not, it may have. For those of you who are not in Houston, we are broadcasting this show from the historic KCOH radio station. It is in 3rd Ward. It's on Alameda, just north of Southmore Boulevard. It is in 3rd Ward, historic 3rd Ward in Houston, which has and continues to be very much historically black. And I use black on purpose, not African American, black on purpose. And over the weekend, we had a very serious incident that happened here, literally right across from the station. We had an explosion at a place of business that was right across the street from the station. And when the news media came to cover that, and I'm glad they did come to cover it because it's 3rd Ward, so sometimes they won't. When they came to cover it, I think I might have seen one person of color that was interviewed, one. And when it was posted, it said, we have had this major explosion in the museum district. This is not the museum district. That's a gentrification problem. So for those of you who are not in Houston, we have, the way the city is set up, they're really close to where Third Ward is the area where a lot of the museums are. The Museum of Fine Arts, the Children's Museum, the History Museum, all of that kind of stuff is called the Museum District. It's really close to the medical center. And that's a great place that people want to be if they are inside the loop, right? It's also really expensive. And so what has been happening in our city, just like in major cities across the country, is this issue around gentrification. And there are pluses and minuses to gentrification. There are reasons for gentrification. But gentrification can also really change the face and the culture and the history of a community. And so in Third Ward, and so my mom grew up in Third Ward, and my grandmother lived in the Third Ward until she passed. And you know, it's been a community that has its struggles, but also has its strengths. You know, Texas Southern University, a historically black college, is in Third Ward. University of Houston is in Third Ward, right across the street from TSU. Mm-hmm. You know, so there are some really big, amazing things about Third Ward, about the culture, about the community, etc. But if you think about what's happening in the city, Houston is such a big city. It's massive. And so that commute thing is real. And so as you look at people not wanting to commute as much, we're trying to figure out rail and buses and all of that kind of stuff. It's cyclical. So now people, at one point, everybody wanted to be outside. Mm-hmm. Everybody wanted to be outside. You get more space, better schools, you know, that whole suburb thing. But now everybody wants to come inside because it's gotten to be so big. Gas is, or was, expensive. People don't want to be in their cars as much. You know, all the other kind of social reasons that people want to get back where they're not commuting as much. And there's only so many places to go. And there's only so much budgetary space for some folks to move into the city, into the loop. Because it's expensive to be in what we call inside the loop here. And so what has happened as Third Ward has begun to gentrify is you're starting to hear people stop using Third Ward and use Museum District because that is nicer. That is cleaner. That is less people of colory.
Colory, yeah.
Right? So I say it intentionally because I am very excited, very blessed, very proud to be able to do this show at the historic KCOH radio station in Third Ward on Alameda. I'm just saying. So that's my soapbox for today. We are in Third Ward.
That was necessary to hear because many people don't know about that.
They don't know.
And there's a lot of things going on social media, and they're saying, you know, because remember Black Wall Street.
Mm-hmm.
That's coming up. We even had a show here called Black Wall Street.
Yeah.
And they were saying, you know, the black businesses are getting burned down.
Yeah.
On Alameda. I'm like, no, you know,
no,
we're not gonna say that.
Right? No.
But at the end of the day, people don't know
what's
going on, and
right.
that this is Third Ward. And I say sometimes, I said, broadcasting live from the historic KCOH studios on the corner of Alameda and Wichita, what some call Midtown, others call Third Ward. I simply call the thing home.
Yeah.
Because there is a debate.
There's a debate
on what it is. Is it the Museum District? Is it Midtown? Or is it Third Ward?
Because, you know, and it's so funny because it is, the way people name it depends on their agenda.
Oh, that's good.
It's Midtown, depending on what you want the rent to be for the apartment. It's Museum District, depending on who you want to feel comfortable. It's Third Ward, if you're being real. Let's just call it like it is, Jerry, right?
Yeah.
So we are in Third Ward, and I'm happy to be in Third Ward. I love me some Third Ward. I'm trying to get into Third Ward. So, curiosity and employee relations. And so I had an incident that happened over the last week. So we've all been going through a whole lot of stuff. And I believe, Laurel's personal opinion, I do believe that this is a righting of the ship, right? So I am still, I told a bunch of people on Sunday, I am now at a controlled burn. Because when all of this stuff started happening, when the murder of George Floyd happened, and everything that transpired from them, and now we've now had 5 in recent days, lynchings, not suicides, lynchings. I was extremely emotional. I was upset. I was tired. I'm still tired. All of those things. And now I'm kind of at a controlled burn. And the reason I say controlled burn is it's okay to feel all those things, and we need to own those, and we need to give ourselves grace to feel all that stuff. And we then need to move into action, because if you just sit in that overwhelm, nothing's going to change. So you got to do something different. And so last week, and I'm saying this for a point, because I want to make a point of impact as a leader. Last week, I posted a video on Facebook Live. I just went live on Facebook, which I don't do a lot other than this show. And I debated whether or not I was even going to go live because there was so much going on, and I was so emotional, and I wasn't sure I was going to be able to be coherent and make sense. But I did it. And my intent was to go live and be on there for about 3 to 5 minutes. You know, hey, here's what's going on. Here's what you need to think about. And I was on there for 25. And it ended because towards the end, I just got to the point where I knew I wasn't going to be able to speak and maintain a level of composure. And so I've gotten a lot of feedback, a lot of positive feedback, a lot of people who have been sharing it, which is lovely. And that wasn't the point. The point wasn't to go viral with my Facebook Live. You know, the point was to speak my truth. And I say this as a point of leadership, and especially when we talk about curiosity and understanding, because one of the key things I talk about in there is speaking truth to power. Knowing your truth and speaking truth to power, and not being afraid or trying to get past the fear of speaking your truth. Because many of us, and myself included, you know, as I find over time, as I evaluate, you know, things that have happened, and, you know, we all have some kind of trauma. Whether or not it's real trauma as most people define it or not. We all go through stuff that sticks with us for a long time. And if you have been through some places where you have spoken your truth very early, and the response to that has not been necessarily positive, you learn over time, kind of as a survival mechanism, to just be quiet. Or to maybe not always speak your truth, or to kind of speak around it, or to try to pick the right words to say it. And it's really important that we don't always try to fix it. We don't always try to fix it, because yes, you need to know your audience, and yes, you need to understand that communication is both ways. So if the person you're talking to is not understanding what you're saying, communication hasn't happened. So you do have to understand who you're talking to, and understand which words you need to pick, and your tone and all that kind of stuff. You do need to be cognizant of that stuff. But you don't need to be so worried about that you dilute your message. And that people don't understand what you're trying to say, and where you're trying to be, and what your position is. Because then you don't need to say it. If you're so concerned about how it's said that it impacts what is said, you've completely undermined the whole point. So what happened with this video is, I was talking to a friend of mine, and she said, Laurel, you're not going to believe this. And I'm not using names because I forgot to ask her permission to tell the story. But I'm going to tell it anyway. And so this person happened to be in a meeting, and there was a very senior person. So again, we're talking speaking truth to power. A very senior person. And this person had been using her name, calling her by the wrong name for a long time. A long time. Always using the wrong name. Not an ugly name, just not her name. Close, but not the right name. Kind of like people calling me Laura or Lauren. I'm like, no, it's Laurel. Now, usually, if it's close and you're looking at me, I respond. If it's not ugly, right? Because it's just not a fight that's worth it. But anyway, and so she's been in this meeting, in this Zoom meetings, and the person keeps talking to her and using the wrong name. And finally, somebody else spoke up and said, I just need to tell you, that is not her name. This is her name. And you have been calling her the wrong name for this period of time, and I just need you to fix that. My words, right? So I'm paraphrasing. And she said, and my friend said, when she went to her later, and she said, you know, I listened to that video, and she said, you got to speak truth to power. Laurel said, you got to speak truth to power. And if you're in HR and you can't do that, you need to get out. So I just decided I was going to speak truth to power. And I thought, in that moment, that's not about me. That's not about me. Now, my truth was about me, but that incident was not about me. That was about everything that we have been talking about on this show, which is true leaders show up, and they show up when it's hard. And they are authentic when it's hard, and they are transparent when it's hard. Because it's not about you. Right? So even when I spoke my truth, that is truly my truth, yes, I needed to get that out because it was killing me, right? I needed to get that out in the universe so it didn't continue to fester and have me do things I didn't want to do. But I also knew in doing that, in showing up, in being vulnerable, in being honest, in being truthful, that someone out there would see that and know that they could do the same thing. Because often fear dictates our action. And so if we are afraid to speak truth to power, if we are afraid to be vulnerable, then we allow behavior to continue that is detrimental to us and to others. Was there a question?
No, when you said that, because I want to publicly say, it did bless me, the video, because when you talked about being in HR, I was having a battle with, okay, should I keep this? Should I not? Should I do this? But when you said, you don't deserve to be in HR, I was like, I'm not going to let nobody just fuck me like that. So, but you made the truth. I mean, because most leaders, we're used to, like you said, showing up, doing the job, but there may be a weakened area where we're not easily able to just let stuff go that's just not working, because we're so lovable. We're warrior and lovable all at the same time. But the video that you did was so necessary, because I believe when you said we don't have to do it without apology, because that came to me this morning. People think differently and see things differently depending on their position. And so I, as a leader, heard what you said, because that's my position as a leader. I see pastors saying stuff, I see apostles say stuff, and they apologize, but they see things differently because of their position. So no apology is necessary. Because the audience that you are supposed to speak to, that is going to hear you, is going to hear you. And so this is a good topic, what you're saying, because we're getting a bunch of hearts, and they're like, they're in agreement with that. Because those that are supposed to hear what you have to say are going to hear it. They'll hear it. And you know, it's, again, I truly believe that that we're here for a purpose and we're here for a reason. And if you really are here to serve, then you don't start out by, what is this going to do for me? How is this going to serve who I'm trying to serve? And in that video, I even started by saying, I want to make a difference. I want to make an impact. But I think it's also important for people who want to work with me to know who they're working with. And this is who I am. And this is what I think, and this is how I feel, and this is how I show up. And so when I talked about that, and when I've gotten some of the feedback around it, and how it impacted people and what message it spoke to people, because I meant everything I said. There was nothing I said that I would take back. I meant that if you do not have the courage to speak truth to power, you don't need to be in HR. I meant that. I meant that while in most cases you don't want to burn bridges, there are some bridges that need to be burned. You just need to make sure you don't need to go back across that bridge. And that's just about cutting things out of your life that are not moving you forward, or that, worst case, are detrimental to you. You are not obligated to keep things in your life that are harmful. You're just not. You're not obligated to stay in a job that is harmful. You are just not. You may have to make a plan. You may have to time it. You may have to do other things from a practical perspective. But there is nothing that obligates you to be mistreated. Nothing. And that is part of the challenge of all of what we're seeing today, right? It's just people being mistreated just because. And then the folks who mistreat them thinking it's okay. Because in many cases we've been silent. Or we've been trained to just let it roll off our back, right? It just is. It just is. Well, I'm not down for it just is anymore. Do we think the silence is protection and we're going to avoid the inevitable?
Yes. In many cases. In many cases. Sometimes silence, there's a few things around silence. Sometimes we're silent because we're just shocked, right? Like, did that really happen? Did they really say that? Sometimes silence is because we're shocked. Sometimes silence is because the other end of that spectrum is sometimes silence is because we know if we open our mouths in that moment, that's not going to go well. And we know ourselves well enough to know it's best to be quiet, right? It's that whole, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all, right? That whole drama. But then there's that piece in the middle that says, either I'm picking my battles, or I'm not quite sure in this environment that I can eliminate my silence and still be safe. Whether that's in corporate, whether that's in a church, whether that's at home, whether that's in a store, wherever that is. And so remember that no matter your reason for being silent, silence is consent. If you say nothing, you must be okay with it, whatever it is. Silence is consent. And so, especially in corporate America, especially in business, if you're running your own business, silence is consent. And this is why we talk about, there's an assessment I do with people, and one of the things that assesses is whether or not you're a false advocate. And what that means is, you may be in a meeting and you are silent, or worse yet, you're like, yep, that makes sense, that's a good idea. And as soon as that meeting is over, you're like, yeah, I can't believe they did that. That is not going to work. That's called a false advocate. Because you are falsely supporting something, but truly, that is not where your heart is, that's not where your head is, and you're going to go undermine it, even if it's just through words.
Yeah.
Right? So sometimes that silence is consent. Silence is consent, but understand that just because someone is silent doesn't mean that they're bought in. And that's why good leaders and good facilitators know if you're having a meeting, if you're having a discussion, and you got someone in your group that has said nothing, you need to find out what they're thinking. And I've used things like, hey, you've been quiet. Is there something we're missing? Right? Because sometimes you truly have a real introvert, right? Who just isn't going to speak up.
Yeah.
But if there's a way you can draw that person in and understand what it is that is keeping them quiet, one, it's a data point for you as a leader, so you understand. But two, there may actually be something that they've thought about that you didn't consider or nobody else considered because all the rest of y'all are just talking and throwing things up against the wall, and you're those kind of people who like to go after problems. And this person is just not engaging like that. But they may have critical information.
Engage, though. You said an introvert, and
sometimes they never engage.
Okay.
But you still need to, as a leader, figure out, is that someone who is just not engaged? Is that someone who has a hard time engaging in this environment, right? What is the reason that we're not having engagement? Is there something else going on? And more so than now, that gets to the topic of today, curiosity, right? Curiosity in leadership. It's not just about, okay, I want to know what's going on with you because that's going to give me ammunition I can use later. That's not the kind of curiosity I'm talking about. I'm talking about deep-seated desire to learn and understand. Because when you learn and understand, that begins to build a trust, that begins to build an appreciation, and that begins to build a level of humility and honesty that enables conversations that are stronger and better and more connected. So if you are a leader and you're exercising curiosity, you are curious about why that person in your meeting is saying nothing.
Yeah.
You want to know why they're being quiet. It's not that you're saying, oh my gosh, here they are, they're quiet again. What's going on? If that's your attitude, that's not curiosity.
What is it?
That's just about, I just need to make sure that if anybody's in my meeting, everybody's got to talk. That's about you.
What if they're disengaged? They're quiet and they're on the phone and they're just looking around like.
And that's when, again, you need to know that. And if you're a leader, you take care of that. Praise in public, criticize in private, right? You pull somebody aside. And I've been in those meetings. We used to have somebody who would sit in executive meetings and go to sleep. Or get on his iPad and shop. And so finally, the leader and I actually talked about it. And he pulled him aside and said, you know what? You can't do that anymore. You cannot do that in a meeting because, one, it sends a bad message to everybody else. But two, it really undermines your own credibility. How is it that we can be in high-level strategic meetings and you go to sleep? Or you're so disengaged that you're shopping? Do you have so little respect for everyone else on your team and for the business? Because that's what it appears. And so if that's not the message you want to send, you might want to fix that.
Is it disrespect for the business or the topic or the leader?
I think it was, in this case, I think it was a little bit of both.
Okay.
I also think in some cases, again, it's about curiosity and understanding why. You got to ask why. It's like the 5 whys, right? Root cause. What is the reason that this person is not engaging? What is the reason that they are dissenting? Because just because someone says they don't agree doesn't mean they don't have a point.
Yeah.
Disagreement isn't always just wrong. It could be that there's a different perspective. There's a reason I named my show The Rutledge Perspective and my podcast The Rutledge Perspective. Because everybody has a different perspective. And how do you know that your perspective is right if you never listen to anybody else's?
You know, when you say that, there was a pastor, and I'm not going to say his name because it's on there, but there was a pastor who put a post out last night, and he disagreed about the situation with the young man who was murdered in Atlanta, that he shouldn't have ran. This is not the same thing as the George Floyd incident. And he shouldn't have grabbed the taser. and everybody went off on him. And
Yeah.
this was his perspective.
Yeah.
And he deleted it, and he said he apologized. Maybe that wasn't the time to say it. But that's truly his perspective.
Yes.
And
That's
so
truly his
if you're
perspective.
going to, because you see it differently, because
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie, I said, I wish he wouldn't have ran.
Right.
I wish he wouldn't have grabbed the gun.
Right.
And still, that doesn't mean that I think he should have been murdered.
Right.
But where is it
Right.
safe where
Right.
you can give a different perspective, as your
Right.
show says?
Right.
Because everybody has a different perspective. Does that make the other person wrong?
See, and here's where the nuances of that happen, Jerry, is that everyone has a right to their perspective. Everyone has a right to their perspective. Even the people that are on the radical fringes. Everybody has a right to their perspective. And you have a right on your social media page or feed or whatever to allow or disallow those perspectives. And we are all human. And when we are emotional and emotionally engaged in something, we don't always really hear what the person is saying. Right? So we may it's the difference between listening and hearing, right? And I always get those mixed up. So you may be reading the words, understanding the words, but do you really understand the context and the meaning behind that person's perspective? So just like you said, I wish he hadn't run. I wish he hadn't, pulled a gun, but that doesn't mean I agree that he should have been shot.
Right.
But if people are already in an emotional state around their perspective or their opinion, the only thing they may have read or heard was he should not have XXXXX. And everything else they didn't hear, they didn't see, they didn't read. It was totally irrelevant for them. And so just as human nature, that's why I say curiosity is so important. Curiosity, respect, and patience. Because again, how do you know if there's some data that you still need to truly bolster your opinion or your perspective if you're not willing to listen to somebody else's and their entire perspective? Right? So I don't know whether he felt compelled to, this pastor felt compelled to apologize for what reason. I don't know.
Well, he said, I still stand by what I said,
Right.
but I'm going to go ahead and delete it. And my thing is, to me,
Yeah.
if you stand by what you said,
Don't
then
delete it.
Don't delete it, because
Yeah.
then it's a mixed message.
Right.
Because you're gonna, I'm almost like Nene Leakes. I said what I said.
Well, and here's the thing. There's a level of courage that has to go if you're going to be curious, if you're going to ask questions, you're going to make statements. There's also a level of appreciation for differences. And there's also a level of deciding where you're going to stand and what you're going to tolerate. Right? And so it is really important to be clear about your perspective, why you have the perspective you have, or not. Because again, if it's your truth, it is your truth. If you are not ready to have your truth challenged, then just own that. I've said that a lot on the show. I am all about you own your own stuff, because I know I got mine.
Please say your name. They're asking for your name.
Oh, my name is Laurel Rutledge. Did I not say my name in the beginning? I sure didn't.
You say it often. That's be good.
Yeah, Laurel
We have
Rutledge.
new listeners today.
Whoop whoop. Where are they from? Does it say?
Tell us where you're from when you come in. If you're
Yes.
new to the show,
Awesome.
please let us know where
Thank you
you're
for joining. So excited you're here. So when we talk about being curious and we think about being leaders and showing up, we have to be really invested in what we're trying to do. And when you're invested, that means you want to know. You want to know. It's not that you want to know to battle, or you want to know to hurt someone else, or to make sure that you're okay and you can shore up your position. Although there may be a little bit of that, right? Because that information can help form your strategy. But that desire to truly know what people are thinking, what their perspective is, how they are coming at an issue, enables you to build a level of trust and understanding, because now you know somebody. And there was a podcast I did a long time ago that talked about showing up for company parties. I hate company parties. I hate them. I would rather pluck out my eyelashes than go to a company party. I just can't stand it. And because I don't like chit chat, it's just not me. However, the reality is this: those company events are not about me, they're about everybody else. Because especially if you are a person of color, or if you are a woman, or if you are anything of an other, going to those events where people can see you, they can get to know you, begins to build trust, begins to build an ability to have more respect. Because people trust you when they know you. And so when you go to these parties, and I have a strategy when I had to go, because they do really drain my energy. I'm already, as I've said, I'm a professional extrovert. I just as soon be at home. So when I have to do these things, I go early. I'm there when it starts. I grab a drink, usually just tonic, because I'm usually driving. Usually tonic. And people don't know. They don't know if I got a vodka tonic. They don't know what it is. And it doesn't matter. So I'll grab a tonic and I work the room. I go see everybody. I talk to everybody for about 5 minutes. 2 minutes here, 3 minutes here, right? And then when I'm done, which is usually about an hour, I leave. But here's what has happened. Because I have been everywhere around that room, I have now, for that hour that I was physically there, I bought myself about another hour of people thinking I was still there.
What to say?
Because they're like, oh, have you seen Laurel? Yeah, she was over there. Oh, have you seen Laurel? Yeah, she was over. See, I bought another hour and I'm gone. I'm at home in my pajamas with my feet up.
You're not the only extrovert in here, because you know what? I remember this the first time you did the show and you talked about that, and I had to do an event, and it was a secular event, and I don't drink, but from your conversation, I ordered a Diet Coke, but I ordered it in like a little glass. Yeah. And I walked the room. I did what I had to do. I walked the room, and my hour was up. That brace had lifted. Right. Cool. She had a drink. Right. She's over there. So and she moved on. And she moved on. And this is what I believe the majority of people are saying. They feel the same way, but you almost feel obligated. To stay. But there is a way that we can get around. Get out. Because here's the thing. You've got to know you. And there are a lot of people who are party people. Right? I mean, they love those events. They love them. And that's why when I was an HR leader, I'm like, we are not the party people. I'm not planning a party. Now, there were people on my team. I'm like, y'all have at it. Here's your budget. Go do it. Right? I'm not planning a party. I'm not pushing paper and I'm not planning a party. But here's the deal. There are people who love it. And the reality is that relationships are built in those casual situations. Yes, you build a reputation professionally, but you build a relationship casually. You build a relationship casually. So your ability to get that sponsor as you try to move up the organization, that ability to find a mentor that's really going to be someone who tells you the truth, not just strokes your ego. That is built through relationships. Through relationships. And relationships are built casually. They are not necessarily built just because you work with somebody every day. That's a professional engagement. And especially Black people, right? We were raised, don't put your business in the street. Don't talk about that stuff. But here's the deal. You've got to find that line for you. Because people want to know about you. They want to know, do you have a dog? How many kids you have? Where do you like to go to? All this kind of stuff that I just as soon not talk about. But that's just me. So you got to find that line for you where the stuff that is really personal to you, there's stuff that you're comfortable sharing. Because people want to know you. Because unfortunately, it's about somebody else's comfort with you. It's not about your comfort. It's about the other person's comfort with you. That person who is managing promotions. That person who is putting people on projects. That person who is deciding who's going to be their next whatever. It's about their comfort with you as an individual and their belief in you as a professional. And you build that through, yes, your work. You got to perform. So having this curiosity about people does not eliminate the need to perform or the requirement to perform in most cases. So you still got to do that. You still got to bring your A game. But people also need to know a little bit more about you. So when you go to those corporate events, especially as you continue to move up the ladder, senior executives are watching you at those corporate events to see, can you be a representative of the company? Are you someone they can trust to carry the message, both to employees and to people outside? Can they put you in front of a customer? Do you have 2 drinks or 200 drinks? And when you have those drinks, how do you manage yourself? That's good.
So it is not about you. It's not about you, not fundamentally. It's about the other person who is beginning to make a decision, the people who are in power, who are beginning to make decisions about you and for you. And so you need to take some of that power back by showing up as your authentic self and speaking truth to power, because you need to be who you are. And you need to understand that there's a period of time where you got to do what you got to do so you can do what you want to do.
There it is. Because a lot of people said, I'm just being real. You don't have to accept me the way you have to accept me. No, really you don't. Because if that the real you is not what's supposed to be what the company is looking for. Okay, like we're in this season of Black Lives Matter.
Right.
And people are tagging Black Lives. But there are some people who have lost their jobs because of what they're saying differently.
Yeah.
And so is that curiosity? Should leaders search social media? Can you make decisions based on somebody's personal mindset?
And people do.
Okay.
So there's some more kids, I think, that just lost their university placements because of some things that they put on social media. So if you put it out there and it's public, just be prepared. Just be prepared, because companies do get to make a decision on the people they want in their organization, not only based on your skill and all of that kind of stuff, but if you are truly contrary to their culture, they don't have to bring you in.
Yeah.
They don't have to bring you in. So just know, do you, but just know that can be a consequence, right? And so as you think about showing up and what you're going to say, and especially from a leader perspective, we said this last week, and I'm going to repeat it again because I've had so many conversations about this in the last several days. When I said last week, don't ask people if they're okay, because we're not okay, number one. But also don't start asking questions if you don't really want to know and are not going to take action.
That's the truth.
Don't do it to check the box to say, oh, well, see, I asked, so they can't say we're not compassionate. They can't say we don't care because we asked. That's just like organizations I was in where I said, we do not need to do another engagement survey. Oh, no, we need to find out what employees think. Why? What are we going to do with it? Because if we're going to ask people what they think, what they want, and we're going to do nothing, all we've done is irritate people.
Absolutely.
And we have told them through our actions that we don't care. Because people watch your actions and see if they're aligned with your words. So if you are truly curious about what your people think and what they need and what they want, then ask the question. But make sure you put the parameters around it that are realistic. You know what? We need to, coming back to work, we want to know what you guys think as we reopen our business. We want to know what you think, what you're most concerned about. We are trying to plan our strategy for reopening or expanding our opening. And there are some things we're going to be able to do, but there are some things we may not be able to do, but we at least want to know so that your opinion can form our strategy. Because if you say nothing, again, silence is consent. If you ask people and you don't put parameters around it, the assumption is you asked me, so you're going to do what I told you I needed. It's human nature. So if you're not going to do what people told you they needed, then you need to tell them that. We want to know because we want it to help form our strategy. And we may or may not be able to do everything you guys want. And if there's something specific that is critical to you as an individual, seek out your supervisor, seek out your manager, let us know. Because there may be things we have to deal with on a case-by-case basis, either for a legal reason or for whatever reason. But here are the things we're going to do collectively for the whole, right? So it's the same thing when you are in a position of asking questions now around how are we hiring people? What are the conversations that we're having? What do we need to do as an organization to make this better, to even the playing field, to truly ensure that we are addressing both overt and unconscious bias, and more importantly, that we are immediately addressing microaggression.
And what is that?
So a microaggression, it's not the poster that's up, in somebody's cubicle that's offensive. A microaggression is something like, "Ooh, I'm so sorry, we had this meeting and we forgot to invite you." Or a microaggression is, yeah, Laurel, I know we were going around asking everybody what we needed, but we ran out of time. So just, send us all an email, right? Microaggressions are those things that clearly disenfranchise someone or hurt, in quotes, someone, but they are so subtle that you couldn't necessarily, unless you truly are a victim of them or are extremely attuned to them, you wouldn't necessarily on the surface see that they were negative, right? And it's the microaggressions that start killing people. They start eating away at people. Those are the things that make people start saying, is it me? Am I crazy? Like I said in my video, you're not crazy. You're not crazy. I'm not crazy. We're not crazy. Now, don't get me wrong. I got issues, and I know what my issues are, right? Because you got to own your own stuff, right? But those microaggressions are the things that get really deep-seated because you begin to question yourself. Because they can be so subtle that you're like, wait, okay, they had 6 meetings this month, and I only got invited to 1, and they kept saying they forgot. Do I need to do something to fix that, right? When it's not you. It's not you. So, and to your point a minute ago, Jerry, when you talked about, how we show up and you doing you, one of the podcasts I did a long time ago too was, you do you sometimes. Because you want to be authentic and you want to show up how you are and you want to be real, because that's another thing we have a tendency to do. You put this mask on, this imposter syndrome, right? You show up, you put on the smile, and any of us who have been people of color in corporate America, women in corporate America have learned to put that mask on. Mm-hmm. We have learned to just show up so that other people are comfortable. And that gets to be habit, but that gets to be really tiring, and it's old. It gets old mm-hmm. really quickly. And it's a heavy burden to bear to make sure that I behave in a way that makes you comfortable. Mm-hmm. But the reason I say you do you sometimes is there are some things that you just don't need to do in professional settings. Just like there's dress that's appropriate and dress that's not appropriate. Mm-hmm. There's behavior that's appropriate and behavior that's not appropriate. And that's not about assimilation. That's not about selling out. That's not about any of that stuff that we like to categorize it. Right? For those friends of us who are, really radical and I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And they just don't like it because I'm insert thing here. Yeah. No, sometimes you got to do what you got to do until you can do what you want to do. And that is not acquiescing. That's not selling out. That's not being less than. That is understanding the environment you're in. That is being attuned to the culture in which you're working and making a conscious decision. If I'm going to stay here, this is how I read this culture. And if I want to stay here and be successful, this is the kind of behavior that I see that's successful. And I either need to emulate that behavior consistently to stay, or I need to emulate it long enough for me to make a plan to go. Mm-hmm. But at some point, if I want to stay, I've got to be attuned enough to the culture to know how to get messages through and to maneuver and to know how to speak truth to power. Because there truly are leaders where you can't tell them the emperor has no clothes. You cannot. It is career suicide. And my issue, and this is why I call that HR people, my issue with that is that people in the organization know who that person is, and the fact that they are still there is a problem for me. Because you have supported that behavior. Usually it's been supported for decades. And that's behavior that's hard to then manage and hard to change because you have demonstrated to the person that it's okay. And then all of a sudden it's not, and they don't understand, and you don't know how to tell them, and it's a hot mess.
But you know what? It's almost hard to trust, because even what we're seeing in the news where everybody's jumping ship and they're getting mad at the president and they say, well, he's this, that. But you knew this. Is that hard to trust? I mean, not saying that you don't believe what they're saying because they worked around this person. But if somebody later comes back and said, well, this person is like this is this, mm-hmm. this, that. Isn't it hard to trust because you've let it go so far?
Absolutely.
And now you're mad, so now you're going to tell it?
We talked about this in HR a lot, is we would have leaders come to us and say, okay, but this person has got to go. So again, curiosity. Mm-hmm. Well, why? Help me understand. Mm-hmm. Right? They've been here 10 years, 15 years, 2 years, whatever the length of time. Mm-hmm. And you need them gone tomorrow? So I really need to understand. Help me understand. If it's something egregious, they stole something, they hit somebody, clearly we got to do something. Mm-hmm. But if this is behavior that has now been exhibited and now you're just tired, I'm so sorry, they can't be gone tomorrow. You got to manage what you allowed. Mm. You've got to manage what you allowed. I got a question here. How can we encourage diversity of hiring without falling into the trap of you don't fit in here, e.g. cultural fit? And that's a great question. I can't see the rest of the question. Let me see if it'll let me do that. Yeah. Yeah. You could. Yeah, that's a good point. So that for the longest time, you would have in the hiring seats, white men who are the ones that were hiring, and they hired people who look like them, which most of us tend to hire people. Many of us tend to hire people who look like us, because that's easier if we're in the hiring seat. unless we have some real understanding of the power of diversity and inclusion. It's not just diversity anymore. Diversity is the easy piece. It's the inclusion that's the hard piece. And so when you're in those situations, a lot of the excuses that are used for not hiring someone who is a woman or a person of color or whatever is, well, they just didn't fit. Well, what does fit mean? And I talk about that a lot. You know, when I had that same leader come to me and say, you know, we got to get rid of this person isn't here, or this person doesn't need the promotion, or what have you. There really is such a thing as fitness for duty, fit for a job. Yeah. But that is really about, does the person have the skills and dispositions to do it? Proven skills and dispositions to do it. It is not just a conversation that says, it just doesn't feel like they'll fit. I'm sorry, you're going to have to give me more than that. Because if we've got a slate of people, and on paper they are all equal, or worse yet, the people that really rose to the top happen to be women or people of color, and then the conversation we have afterward was, yeah, but I don't know. Are they really going to be able to make it here? Are they really going to be able to understand our culture? Are they really going to be able to make it here? Because, you know, it's really hard here sometimes, you know, all of that drama, yada, 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 right? And here's the thing I say to that. Again, speaking truth to power, the HR people that hear that got to step in that. You got to give me more than you don't think they fit. Why? Give me specific examples of why you don't think they fit. Because if you would bring anyone else into the organization and you bring them into the culture, you help them understand the culture, you help them on board and assimilate, why wouldn't you do the same thing for this person? What makes you think that they can't assimilate just as easily as someone else? You got to help me understand. I use that a lot. Help me understand. Because it's a lot easier to say, help me understand, than saying, that is the stupidest stuff I've ever heard, right? Because that's not kind. Mm-hmm. I still mean the same thing, but the words are, help me understand, right? So it's really important to if you're really looking at ensuring that you have a diverse pool of people, number one, and then a diverse slate to hire people, number two, and then diverse candidates and diverse workforce population, you've got to be able to speak truth to power. You've got to have some courage. You've got to understand that, again, those perspectives, being curious about other perspectives and understanding the value of different perspectives. If you don't understand that, you can have a completely diverse population and you will get nothing out of it because you haven't included them. Because diversity is easy. When we are seeing the really, really small percentages of people of color in CEO roles, in senior executive roles, we hear a lot of these things. I was talking to Sharon Smith-Akinsanya, who runs the People of Color Career Fair in Minnesota. And she hears the same thing. Oh, we just can't find them. We can't find them. Having a diverse workforce is not a sourcing issue. It's not a supply issue. The most highly educated population right now is African American women. So it's not that you can't find them. It's that you don't know how to look for them or don't want to. And then rising up through the ranks, it is not a supply issue. It is a pipeline issue. Because many people of color, many women, will self-select out early because they just get tired. And if I'm going to have to fight this battle this hard just to get one more promotion when I see all these people being promoted against me, I would rather just move lateral and move somewhere else and start all over. And that's the decision a lot of us make. And unfortunately, what that means is our careers tend to be stalled because instead of being able to move up really exponentially, sometimes we're having to start over and sometimes even starting lower to go somewhere else. Now, if you're lucky, you're able to have this next place actually see your skill and see your value and actually bring you in at a different level. But that doesn't always happen. So that curiosity, having that really deep gut curiosity about people helps to build a foundation that says, I want to know because I value you. I want to know because I value the organization. And I want to know because I know that if I have that data and if I understand your perspective, the ultimate outcome of what we do is going to be better. Or our ability to respond if something doesn't work is going to be faster because we got more people's eyes on it. We've got different perspectives on it. Those are the kind of things we got to look at.
Florence Hamilton says, help me understand. So they're listening to you.
Yeah.
Help me understand.
Thank you.
On this part though, but can we diversify and it still be a right fit?
Yes.
I use Ben Carson as a thing.
Okay.
It just disturbs me sometimes when I see him talking. I'm like, why? Okay, and sometimes we put people in position because of what we need to meet the quota. But earlier, before you and I got on the air, I said, listen, I want to do some reprogramming. There's some different shows I want to do.
Right.
Do you know this person? Do you know somebody who's good at this, that, and the third? Because the people are there, but we may have to go outside of what we've been picking from.
And outside of our circles.
And outside of our circles. And so
Yeah.
I know you're outside of your circles and you know somebody and you have to go look.
Yes.
But can we still diversify and they still be a fit? Because sometimes we want to diversify so bad, but they're still not a fit though. Just because they're
So let me be really clear.
okay.
No woman and no person of color wants anybody to hire, promote, engage someone who does not have the skills or capabilities to do the job.
Okay.
Because all that does is then give the excuse to the organization to say, see, we tried and it didn't work. But if you hired the wrong person, you hired the wrong person, regardless of the demographic that they fit.
Okay.
So you can absolutely hire the right people and a diverse group of people.
Yeah.
You can absolutely do that if it's your intent to do so. But please do not just pick somebody because you're like, we hired 4 women, so now we got to get a man and he's got to be Hispanic. So let's go find one of them. No. That is not diversity. That is not inclusion. That's an excuse. That's an excuse. That is a way for you to just check the box and say, well, see, we tried.
Yeah.
There is nothing in executing diversity efforts that says you should hire unqualified people. I don't mean people with less skills, right? Because sometimes you hire people because you see potential in them. That's not what I mean. This is an art. It's not a science, other than some of the compliance issues, right? So if you have an opportunity to hire somebody and in any other circumstance you would see the potential in them, then see the potential in everyone and take the opportunity and take the chance and put in the effort to onboard, to train, to support, to mentor that person that you see potential in that may fit a demographic category. But don't just hire. This is not a quota thing. It's not a quota thing. Don't just hire it just so you can say you did, because that's not helping anybody. It's not helping anybody, and nobody's stupid. Nobody's stupid.
Nobody. Florence says you're helping her because she said, instead of asking why, I can now say, help me understand what you are saying.
Yes. Yes. Clarity. It is not unkind to be clear. And if you are not clear, ask the question. I just want to make sure I understand. Help me understand. Because here's what I heard. Because remember, the basis of communication, one person's talking to another, but if the person you're communicating to didn't understand and hear, communication didn't happen. Right? So it is okay to say, I don't understand. Let me make sure I'm clear. And I do that a lot. Because again, if you are listening to respond and not listening to understand, it is highly likely that you missed something. So ask the question. Don't be afraid to ask the question. In fact, it's important to ask the question. It is important to be curious enough about the other person's perspective, even if you're in your gut saying, this isn't going to work, that's not what I mean, this is wrong. Have enough concern about the issue at hand, even if you don't care about the person. Be concerned enough about the problem you're trying to solve to get deeper into understanding of what the issue is and what the perspective is so that you can come to the right conclusion.
That's good.
Because especially if you're invested and someone is coming at it from a different angle or contrary to your investment in something, it is very easy to dismiss it. And again, that person could have some data that is critical to your decision. They may not, but they might. So what do you have to lose by asking one more question?
And is it okay to ask, what do you believe you can bring to the table? Because I've had a lot of people who said, I can do this, I can take this to the next level, I can go here, I can do this, and that's okay. What do you believe you're going to add to the table? And then when you hear what they add to the table, it's really a whole different table than what you're working on.
That's so funny that you say that, because there was a picture that was sent to me yesterday. I've seen it before, but it was sent to me yesterday. And it was this table full of men. It was an interview, right? It was a cartoon. A table full of men. And then there was a woman that was clearly the interviewee, right? For interviewing for a job. and the caption under it said, "Just what do you bring to the table?" So I only give that to say this. It is okay, unless it's an illegal question, it's okay to ask. So tell me what you believe you bring either to the table or to our process, to our strategy. What do you believe that you will add to what we're trying to get? That's a valid question.
Yeah.
For a number of reasons. You want to see where their head is. You want to see, do they understand your strategy? Do they understand where you're trying to go? There's a lot of reasons to ask that question because you get thought processes. Mm-hmm. But you also need to understand what you want when you ask that question.
Right.
And you need to be open enough to say, "Ooh, I actually hadn't thought about that. That might be something that we're needing to look at." Or maybe not right now, but later on. And if this person has that skill right now, to go ahead and have it in my organization when I'm ready is probably a good thing. So as you're talking to people and you're interviewing people, especially when you're beginning to build your team, that curiosity is really key. But it's also understanding what your strategy is, where you're trying to go, and can those people not only be good for you now, but can they be good for you in the future?
That's good, because I did have that phone call yesterday. A young man called me to ask for something to do, but it didn't fit what we were doing. Mm-hmm. But in his conversation, as I listened to him more, he was talking about an organization that he has come up with for Black young men, entrepreneurs. And I'm like, hey, now that's what I'm looking for. Right. And I do think we need to give people that time and space. But I do think there are some people off the back you already can tell. Because I'm not, I know crazy. Yeah. You can already tell this is going something different, but it is good to give the people the opportunity to tell that story. Somebody's inboxing me saying there's another lynching here in Houston, and I don't want to share that information.
Yeah,
I just looked up. Yeah. But Laura, before we go with this, as far as bringing people to the table, as far as diversifying, as far as with social media.
Yeah.
Does social media play a major role in an employer's decision to hire?
I would say it depends. It depends. It is public information. And so when people do background checks, everything you put that's public is fair game. When social media really first started taking off, there was a lot of debate among employment lawyers, among HR people. Do we go check people's profiles? Do we require people to give us their password if it's private?
Password.
And for a while there were some companies that were saying, if you have a social media, then and if you want to work for us, you have to give us your password to your personal social media because we need to check it out. That has since gone away. As far as I know, for the most part, that has since gone away, right? Because that was truly an invasion of privacy. But if you put stuff out there and it's in the public domain, it's in the public domain. So when people run background checks, if you show up on Facebook and you show up on LinkedIn, it is not unusual for people to check your profiles. It's not unusual.
There's a policeman under fire here and now because of what he said.
Because of what he said. Yeah. There's someone who was on the school board in Odessa. We are seeing the impact of social media and the impact of your positions and your opinion and what you put out there on people's lives. Not only the people who are impacted by what you say, but how you can be impacted by what you say. So it is definitely something that employers may check. It may be a data point for hiring or making a decision. It is not necessarily, I would say for the majority of employers, going to be something that is going to be the final decision maker necessarily. Although again, we're seeing some universities based on some posting that some kids may have rescinded their offers for kids to come into their classes that year. So it can have a severe impact on you if it's contrary to popular rhetoric. So just know, if you put it in the public domain, it is in the public domain. And it could impact you. So it may be the difference between hey, come work for us, or you know what, we're going to pass. It may be. So with that, we keep running over because I love Tuesdays. I love working with you guys, and we get into such good discussion. So curiosity, be curious, be intentionally curious. Be curious because it's something that you really want to do and want to know, and understand that those relationships are built casually, not necessarily just professionally. And through that curiosity, you get to know the person, you get to build trust, you get to understand who they are and where they are, and you get to build that common ground so that even if you don't agree, you can at least appreciate the other person's perspective and therefore potentially shore up or modify your own. So thank you for listening.
One quick thing
Yeah.
before we go. Is there going to, that you know of, an extension for those that didn't get a chance to register?
To vote?
To vote.
No, you have to vote. It has to be 30 days before whatever the election or primary runoff is. So if you didn't register yesterday, you will not be able to vote in this primary runoff election in Texas that happens on the 14th. But you still have time to register to make sure you're registered for November 3rd. So don't just not register because you didn't get registered yesterday. Go get registered because November 3rd is still coming up, y'all.
Now tell the difference because somebody might.
So November 3rd is the general election.
Mm-hmm.
That's the general election. So the presidential election, congressional elections, that's the general election. Okay, so November 3rd is still coming, so you still need to get registered. If you're not registered, just register. Just register. And there were no primaries this week, but just real quick, next week, Kentucky, state primary and presidential primary. Mississippi, state runoff. New York, state primary and presidential primary. North Carolina, state runoff. South Carolina, state runoff. And Virginia is a state primary. That's on Tuesday, June 3rd, next week. So those states, you're going to be voting next week. Get registered. Get registered. Thank y'all for watching. I'll be back next week. Love you so much. Appreciate you being here.